it here in open court because this is how they wish to do it, but we are obviously here in a criminal case. Not only the burden of proof drastically different in a civil case and a criminal case, but this court itself has said to us a number of times, this is not a medical malpractice case. Any testimony regarding standard of care, when the jury has received no instructions as a standard of care, how to apply the standard of care, it's not the same burden, I think it would be completely inappropriate. Also, don't think that that testimony can be cured by a jury instruction later. I did do some preliminary research on a standard of care jury instruction in a criminal case. Couldn't find one, which makes sense, because why would it be given in a criminal case if it's a civil instruction? So that's really where we stand with respect to that issue. Your Honor, it doesn't, his testimony, there's still parts of his report where he talks about his findings with respect to intent, and while I'll certainly cross-examine him on those findings, I don't see any reason why he can't testify to those. It's the standard of care reference that he repeatedly states, and the ways in which he lists how Dr. Husel has allegedly violated the standard of care is a real issue. And I don't think that testimony should be allowed within this court. Additionally, while we're talking about Mr. Schweiger, or Dr. Schweiger, I will say, Your Honor, I think another issue that's come to light with me as I'm prepping for this witness is that he reviewed things and made conclusions and findings, which he has stated in his report, which are not admissible under 703. And I know this court knows 703. Experts have to rely on evidence that's admissible. In his deposition transcript and in his report, he states that he's relying on deposition testimony from nurses. He's relying on other background information about Dr. Husel, which I won't get into here in open court, but is information that is not admissible in this trial. He's also relied on depositions from pharmacists. And in fact, at one point in his deposition, he states that his primary finding with respect to intent is the deposition of nurse Jake Deemer. And of course, depositions aren't admissible in this case and can only be used for impeachment purposes. So I think we've got two issues with Dr. Schweiger. The first is the standard of care, and the second is that he has relied upon materials in his findings and conclusions, which are not admissible in this court, and I think that's a violation of 703.
Okay. Ms. Grubb?
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. Let me point out, first of all, that I have reviewed two of the defense expert reports, those being reports for Joel Zivit and Michael Pinsky, which I assume we're going to hear about later. Both of them opine about standard of care issues. Joel Zivit indicates that Dr. Husel's actions comports with the standard of care, standard of practice in the state of Ohio. And Dr. Pinsky says that there is no standard of care, which is absurd. Additionally, the original report from Dr. Schweiger was rendered in 2020. The supplemental letter was rendered January 2022. He made a deposition with defendant's civil counsel June of 21. They've been on notice as to all of his opinions for a very long period of time, and they choose the morning he's supposed to testify to bring this up. Our expert is triple boarded. He's a clinician, a practitioner at a major hospital in Tampa. He's on every peer review, quality assurance, and guideline and policy committee at that hospital relating to his practice. Standard of care is what a reasonably careful physician would do under given circumstances. Totally pertinent. In order to prove knowledge, intent, purpose, or good faith, all of which are an issue in this trial, you must be able to establish accepted practice. Dr. Husel should know or should have known what a reasonably careful physician would do under certain circumstances. A gross violation of these standards are why we are here. The standard of care is related to defendant's burden of establishing good faith for the immunity statute. The defendant is entitled to a jury instruction on what treatment elements of medical negligence should receive. The defense has already opened the door. The defense constantly argues that Dr. Husel is practicing good medicine, running codes, and saving lives. The defense has argued that doctors disagree about what is proper treatment. That's been through the entire case. That should allow us to place into evidence expert testimony of what proper treatment should be from our viewpoint. Also, they argue that there are no upper limits to doses of narcotics, and as given by one of their experts, no applicable standard of care, which we know is not possible. Otherwise, extreme abuse could occur to a dying patient. We know that's not acceptable in our country. With that, Your Honor, I hope that the court sees that given the fact that they have already raised these issues in their expert offerings, that we are well within the bounds of what's appropriate for this case to discuss, place into evidence, and have the jury receive information about the standard of care. Clearly, they can cross-examine if they feel that's not appropriate, and I'm sure they will. Additionally, as to any of the bases of Dr. Schweiger's reports or opinions going to the second part of their argument, again, proper cross-examination can parse out what is or what isn't. His deposition is not going to be in evidence in this case, nor is Jake Deemer's. But if the defense feels that his reports in this case, or letter in this case, have been based upon other extraneous information, then that can be parsed out again through cross-examination. And now that the issue has been raised, I will raise it in direct. Thank you, Your Honor.
Anything else?
Just briefly, Your Honor. Rule 703, basis of opinion testimony by experts, states, the facts or data in the particular case upon which an expert bases an opinion or inference may be those perceived by the expert or admitted in evidence at the hearing. Of course, we know that Dr. Schweiger perceived none of the depositions himself, nor did he do his own interviews. And again, the depositions and also summaries of depositions that civil counsel made for him are not evidence which would be admitted at this hearing. I will just also simply say this as to what we've opened the door to. The defendant, William Husel, has no burden of proof. We have put forth no expert testimony. In fact, when the state closes its case, we could do nothing but say, and we rest. We have not put forth any expert testimony, and I will say to this court right now, I am more than happy and find it appropriate to limit our experts' testimony to issues of intent, their review of the records, and not have our experts, should we call them, testify about any issues with respect to quote-unquote standard of care. This is not a civil case. This court has made that clear to us, abundantly clear, particularly last week. And I respect the court's statements with respect to this is not a medical malpractice case, and we are trying to try this case accordingly, and therefore happy to play by all the rules with respect to standard of care, out.
Ms. Crabb, this is not an effort to seek a lesser, is it?
Your Honor, I think that the court has opined about that at different times. But if the shoe fits, and if the immunity statute does not fit in this case, then we'll have to cross that bridge when we get to it. But in the meantime, I would believe that we would be well within our bounds and our rights as a state of Ohio to present evidence about what a reasonably careful physician would do in this situation. Fully, whether we intend on pursuing any lessors or not. We haven't really come to that bridge. And how else does one really gauge the actions of a physician if you're not gauging it according to standards? If the court feels at the end of our case that it's inappropriate, then I think the record could be stricken or an instruction given. In the meanwhile, this is how doctors talk to each other. This is how they determine what is right and what isn't in the context of medicine. And as I indicated before, the defense from opening statement onward has said that doctors disagree, which puts the issue into play, into contention, because sure they can disagree, but there is mainstream and then there is not mainstream. There are standards and then there are no standards. We submit that our case should include and will include proper standards of medical care. I can't say it any simpler.
Anything else?
No, Your Honor, thank you.
Let's go ahead and get started. Let me think about this for a minute. Okay? You got a witness ready to roll? Let's deal with that, and then before the doctor gets on the stand, we'll have another conversation. Can you, while you're up there, Jaime, could you make sure the light's on?
Yes, ma'am.
In case someone needs it.
It just takes a second. There you go.
I think I hit the wrong one.
You're fine.
She has the magic touch.
It just takes a second to share. Yeah.
Okay. Who's up? Who's got it on your side?
I do, Your Honor.
Okay. What?
May I have the floor for a minute?
Yeah, go
I
ahead.
just want to add something. Ms. Nick reminded me that in our opinion, the opinions expressed by Dr. Schweiger in the deposition are not being crossed over into the criminal case or in his opinions for this case. I hope I made that clear when I was speaking to the court before. And we're not trying to offer the deposition or any opinions in the deposition in this case. I suspect he'll be cross-examined on a deposition, but I'm not going to refresh his recollection or use the opinions expressed in the deposition.
I currently have up on my screen State versus Knuckles, 121 Ohio State 3rd, 332, which appears to be somewhat on issue. So I'm reading it now while we're waiting. Just thought you guys would want the citation. Do you want it again?
Yes, please, Your Honor.
121 Ohio State 3rd, 332. It involves a doctor administering drugs in a breach of the standard of care and dispensing. So I haven't had a chance to read it.
All rise.
You may be seated. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Hope you all had a great weekend. We're going to continue on with the testimony. Ms. Blugert, call your next witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. The state would call Ms. Chris Allison.
Take a deep breath. Raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? I do. Okay, I want you to make yourself comfortable there. You have a mic there in front of you. I need you to state your name for the record and spell your name so my court reporter gets used to your voice.
Okay. My name is Christine Allison, Christine Allison.
You guys hear okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Ms. Blucher?
Thank you. And for the record, Corinne Bucher on behalf of the state. Mrs. Allison, do you prefer to go by Mrs. Allison, Chris? Or
Chris.
Chris, all right. Good morning. Thank you for coming in today.
Thank you. Good morning.
I've called you in today to talk a little bit about yourself and about Troy Allison. Who is Troy Allison to you?
Troy's my late husband.
Okay. And how did you meet him? Where did you meet him?
Do I have to tell?
Just give us the abridged version.
I was bartending for Extra Money, and he came in as a customer.
And when was that?
Oh, my Lord, it was in 1999, just before the big 2000.
And were the two of you ever married?
Yeah, we were together for 7 years before we got married. We were together for 18 years total.
And do you have any children?
I have 2 children from previous marriages,
What are their names?
David and Mariah.
And Mariah, did we hear from her last week?
Yes.
Okay. And so who was Troy to Mariah then?
He was her stepfather. David and Mariah are 7 years apart, so David was a little older than Mariah. Mariah spent more time with Troy. David was a teenager, you know. He came home to change, basically.
Now, I want to talk a little bit about 2018 with you, if we can.
Okay.
June 2018, was Troy hospitalized?
Yes.
Do you recall what that was for?
Troy took ibuprofen for his leg, for the pain. It just worked the best. And his kidney, he was having kidney problems, and the doctor just suggested that he take a lesser amount of ibuprofen. He felt maybe he was taking too much of it.
When you say leg pain?
From his, the sore on his leg.
Okay. So do you recall when he was just discharged from the hospital if he was prescribed any pain medication?
He was prescribed morphine.
Do you know the details about that?
I don't remember filling it. I do know I did fill the antibiotic. We just felt that was more important. So I do remember filling the antibiotic. I do not remember filling the morphine.
Do you remember how long that was supposed to be a prescription for?
I think it was like a week, 5 days, 7 days.
To your knowledge, did Troy take any opiates within the last year of his life?
When the doctor prescribed, like if he was, in the hospital, yeah, they would give him. But as far as at home, ibuprofen.
Okay. So let's talk about July 15th, 2018.
Yeah.
What were you and Troy doing that day?
We were settling down to we would do like movie-thons or show, like where you watch a whole series of a show, and we were kind of settling in, deciding on what we were going to watch for the night.
All right. Then what happened?
He was hyperventilating. He started hyperventilating, and he got nervous, and he was like, call the squad. And I'm like, you're hyperventilating. So I went and got a paper bag, and I was calling 911 because he did ask me to. But I was telling him to blow in the bag. Well, he was like trying to catch his breath to blow into the bag, and I was like, no, you blow into the bag. So that's what he did. By the time the ambulance got there, he wasn't hyperventilating anymore.
All right. And then what happened after that?
The guys came in, he checked his vitals, he said, his sugar's a little high, I really want to take him in just as a precaution. And Troy's like, no problem.
And did you ride with him in the ambulance?
No, Troy was walking out to the ambulance, he stopped at the door and he looked at me and he said, are you going to come? And I said, yeah, let me get Gypsy out, because I put the dog away because the squad was there. I said, let me get Gypsy out and I'll be right over. And he's like, okay, and he walked on out to the ambulance.
When was the next time you saw him?
They were doing chest compressions on him in the emergency room.
Okay. And when you walked in and saw that, what happened after that?
Well, Mariah and I and Paige walked back there, and they were doing chest compressions. And I was just kind of like, oh no, because I really didn't know what was going on. They wouldn't let me back there. A chaplain kept coming. She came a couple times and asked me some medical questions, but that was it. So I really didn't know what was going on.
So prior to Mariah getting there, had you seen Troy yet?
No, they wouldn't let me back there.
All right. So when you saw that in the emergency room, do you remember what happened after that?
Mariah started asking him questions, him being the doctor in the ER. He answered her questions. They stopped doing chest compressions. Troy had a heart rate of 75. The doctor was, like, oh, cool. He stabilized him. He said, I want to get a CT, and then he's going to go up to ICU.
And do you remember what happened next?
They took Troy to the CT scan. I went up to the 4th floor because that's where the ICU was. And
I'm sorry, I forgot to ask you, what time do you arrive at the hospital?
I thought I called the squad. I think it was like 10:30, somewhere in there.
All right. So by the time he's taken up to the CT, do you happen to know what time it was?
I honestly don't.
Okay. So do you know how long you had been at the hospital by the time the CT scan?
Seems like I've been there a while. That's why I called Mariah, because they wouldn't let me see him. I didn't know what was going on.
Do you know an estimate of how long you think you were waiting before
Probably a
Mariah
couple
got
hours.
there?
A couple hours.
Okay. So you get there, I'm sorry, you and Mariah get there, he's taken to the CT scan, and then what happens after that?
I go up to the 4th floor. I go in his room. He's in a room. There's like, the lights are all out, but the rooms have their lights on. And so I go in his room. Dr. Husel and the nurse was in there. It was a male nurse. I believe he asked me about if Troy wanted to be on life support. And I was like, well, no. And so then the next thing is he's telling me, he's like, I'm 99.9% sure Troy is brain dead and his organs are failing.
When you say he, who is he?
Dr. Husel.
Okay. And did he introduce himself to you? Did you know
I think
who
he
was?
might have. I'll be honest, I'm horrible at names, great at faces, horrible at names. But I think he introduced himself.
Okay. And after he mentioned that he was, you said, what did he tell you his prognosis was?
He said, I am 99.9% sure he is brain dead and his organs are failing. Mariah had walked up while he was saying the 99.9% sure that he's brain dead, and Mariah, I can't tell you what she said, and he answered her no. Well, I can't tell, what am I allowed to say?
Okay, why don't you let me worry about that?
Okay. I don't want to get in trouble by you.
So, first of all, Troy had had a CT done, correct?
Correct.
Do you know if those results ever came back?
They weren't back at that time.
Okay. And what happened after that?
He said, I'm going to pull the tube, give him something to make him comfortable.
And what was your response to that?
I just said, okay. Like, I was just like, someone says, I'm going to the bathroom, okay.
All right. And what did you think that meant? What did you think would happen
Well,
when that happened?
he's telling me he's 99.9% sure that he's brain dead and his organs are failing. But you take tests to verify that, right?
All right. And
We don't go by what he thinks. You have to go by tests.
so when you said okay, when he said that
Yeah.
he would take the tube out and make him comfortable, what do you think the purpose of that was for?
I'll be honest, I really didn't know. You're going to make him comfortable, which he's already resting comfortably, but, they wake you up in the middle of the night to give you something to sleep, so.
Did he use the phrase palliative extubation
No.
with you?
I'm going to give him something to make him comfortable.
Did he ask you to sign a DNR?
No, I have signed nothing up to this point.
Did he ask you about changing the DNR status? Not necessarily signing anything, but changing the DNR status?
No, we're not, I don't know if you understand, but Troy is laying there resting comfortably. He's stable. Why are we,
What did you think would happen when they took the tube out?
I honestly didn't think about it. This all happened we're doing this. We're not talking about things. We're doing.
How long had you been up in the ICU at this point?
10 minutes?
So you said okay, and what did you think anything would happen to Troy if the tube was removed?
No.
So after you say okay, what happens next?
They shut the curtain. 2-3 minutes later, he opens the curtain.
Who is he?
The nurse.
Okay.
Sorry, the male nurse. And I'm literally standing at the foot of his bed. I just took one step and I kind of screamed, "Is he dead?" And the nurse turned around and was like, "Yeah," and then turned back around and started doing whatever he was doing.
And why did you say that? Why did you yell that?
Because he's dead. he's laying there resting comfortably, and now he's dead. How did we get there?
So did you expect for him to be dead if they took the tube out?
Objection,
No.
Your Honor, asked and answered.
It has been sustained.
So you made that statement, and then someone responded to you. Who was it that responded to that?
The male nurse.
And where was Dr. Husel at this point?
I don't know. He wasn't there.
Okay. Did anyone come in to pronounce Troy dead?
I honestly don't remember.
Do you remember what you did after you realized that he was dead?
I looked at Mariah and I was like, we didn't see his last breaths. I've seen a person die naturally and it just wasn't like that, so I was confused.
Were you in the room at any point when Troy received medication?
No, they had shut the curtain.
Okay, and before making any decisions to take the tube out, did you see him receive any medication?
No, I didn't even see him do vitals or nothing. They didn't do anything.
Okay. So they close the curtain. You're not in there. They open the curtain.
Troy's dead.
How quickly was that from the time that you stepped
2-3
out?
minutes tops.
Okay. And after you realize that Troy is dead, what happens next?
I kind of said what I said, and then I just wanted to get out of there. I kissed him, told him I loved him, and I wanted to leave. I was ready to go. I just, how you get that feeling, I have to get out of here, that's the feeling I have.
Did you talk to anyone else while you were there other than the male nurse and the doctors?
The chaplain caught me in the hallway as I was leaving. She said that she needed me to sign, wanted to know what funeral home to call, what release his body to. So I did sign some papers in.
Okay. Now, I'm going to show you something that's been marked as Exhibit 9A. It's been previously shown. I just would like to confirm with you. Is this a photo of Troy?
Yeah.
And do you know how recently that photo was taken?
No, he had a full beard. But that was, we call it the mug shot because it's your identification, your driver's license picture, your ID picture.
But, so do you know at all when this photo was taken, just as a...
It was probably a couple years, 2015.
Okay.
Okay, hold on a second. Let her finish her question,
Okay.
okay? Because you're getting two people talking at once.
Okay, I'm sorry.
And after Troy passed, you said you decided to get out of there after talking to the chaplain. Did you hear anything from Mount Carmel after that?
It was right after Christmas. I was at work. I received a message on my phone, and so I went to my car, called him back, and this doctor, he put me on speakerphone.
I'm going to stop you real quick.
Sorry.
You said right before Christmas of what year?
I'm sorry, right after Christmas,
Of what year?
2018.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure
Oh,
the
I'm
jurors
sorry.
know where we're
Yeah,
at.
it was, Troy died in July, and this was December, right after Christmas, and a gentleman called me, and he said he was a doctor.
So what it
Okay.
said.
Sustain, let's,
So I'm not asking for you to tell me about the conversation
Okay.
you had. I'm just asking, the time frame. So I just wanted to get that out first. So you
Sorry.
said you found out something in December.
Yes.
And after you had this phone call, what was your understanding of the situation?
The light went on, and it all made sense then. It all made sense.
And why do you say that?
Because he told me what had happened, and now I understood why Troy wasn't breathing.
What do you mean, what happened?
I can't tell you what I was told.
No, but you can tell me what your understanding was.
My
What did you think
understanding was
happened?
Troy was given an overdose of narcotic. And now it's like the light went on. It all made sense then.
And did you ask for him to be given any medications while you were at the hospital?
No.
Nothing further for this witness, Your Honor.
Cross, Ms. Menashe?
Here we go.
Morning.
Morning.
Diane Menashe, on behalf of Dr. William Husel. I think we were out in the hallway together for a second.
Yeah, we were doing therapy on the dog.
The light went on. I want to go back and talk to you about how it all began. Troy was hyperventilating, and that's what led to you calling the ambulance,
I called because he asked me to.
the squad.
Yes.
Let's go back before that call to 911. Troy had a wound to his leg, is that
Correct.
correct? That had, you have to say yes.
I said correct, sorry.
And the wound to his leg had been ongoing for over a year. Is that
Correct.
correct? That's correct.
Correct.
And he had been to the hospital several times with complications with respect to the wound, correct?
How many times is several?
More than 2?
Correct.
More than 3?
Yes.
And in fact, when he was brought to the hospital, Mount Carmel West, after the 911 call, you told the doctor, did you not, in the emergency room, again, that he had not been compliant with taking his medications and/or dealing with the wound. Is that correct?
I never told them that.
So let's go through the doctors and nurses and chaplains that are involved in this case. So is it your testimony to this jury today that any doctor's note that indicated you said Troy was not compliant with his medications, that doctor note is false?
I never said that.
Did you ever hear any other family members say that?
Maybe.
Is maybe, when might have you have heard another family member say that?
Like, which visit are we talking about?
Because there were a number, right? So
Well-
how about the visits in 2017? Do you ever remember hearing another family member other than yourself say that Troy was not compliant with his meds or changing the dressing on the wound?
I changed the dressing on the room.
Do you remember a note in the file that indicates that at times the dressings on the wound would go unchanged for a week and a half?
So does that mean that we kill him or what?
Okay. You answer her question, please.
What was your question?
A note in the file that indicated that the wound would at times go a week and a half without having its dressing changed.
We've
Would that
never-
note be inaccurate?
That would be inaccurate.
And because as you told the Columbus Police Department, you were the one that was changing the dressing on the wound, right?
99.9% of the time.
And I think you also told Columbus Police that the wound was healing, did you not?
It would heal, then it would, maybe not do so good, then it would heal. We were back and forth.
And of course, the wound in and of itself isn't the only problem that Troy had. Would you agree with me with that with respect to his health?
I would agree.
Okay, because at the date and time when he's at Mount Carmel West, he's got the respiratory failure because we know he's on the mechanical vent. right? The tube's down his throat.
They put that in his tube because he stopped breathing.
Right. Because multiple times when Troy was there in the ER, he coded, did he not? Multiple times.
What night are we talking about?
He gets to the emergency room about 11 p.m. on the 14th, does he not?
Yes.
I'm talking about the 14th into the 15th.
Okay, I'm just asking because you have said several, so I didn't know.
Sure, well, you testified on direct about how they wouldn't let you back.
Correct.
But then when they let you back, you saw him coding.
Correct.
They were giving him CPR, were they
Correct.
not? And those were male nurses?
Yes, it was a male nurse.
And you know, do you not, from not only your visual observations, but from your conversations with medical personnel that night, that he coded for 24 to 27 minutes. Do you remember being given that information?
I asked, how long has this been going on?
And you were given that information, were you not?
I was given 3 different answers.
Okay. And one of the answers you were given was 24 to 27 minutes, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, I think so.
And so then ultimately, he's moved to the ICU.
After he stabilized, correct.
And I was curious about that because I was listening to your direct, and you indicated that a doctor in the ER, a doctor that you didn't give a name to, said, "Oh, he's good." Do you remember your testimony on direct about that?
When they stopped doing CPR.
You told this jury that a doctor told you, "Oh, he's good." Do you remember that testimony?
Yeah. Actually, I think he said, do you want me to tell you exactly what I think he said?
Oh, cool, I think is what you testified.
I think he said, oh, wow, his heart rate is 75. It was something to that effect. Oh, cool, oh, wow, his heart rate is 75.
And at this time, because was it that you had texted or called Mariah? Because there's been,
I texted her first, and then I called her.
okay. And then Mariah arrives at the hospital.
Correct.
Now, Mariah is your daughter.
Correct.
She also, at the time, had medical training, did she not?
She knew enough to get her in trouble.
Not my question.
Just a comment.
She had been to nursing school.
She was currently in nursing school.
So you have someone with you, by your side, that is in nursing school. And assuming, just from common knowledge and sense, that you understood at the time that going from an emergency room to an ICU floor doesn't mean things are going cool.
Well, we're leaving the emergency room to go to another part of the hospital, so if you're moving somebody, they're usually stable. You don't move somebody that's actively dying, as you say.
I never.
You've said actively dying a lot, not right this second.
Okay. Why don't you wait for a question?
I know, sorry.
Have you watched this trial on TV?
Yes, I have.
Every day?
Yes, I have.
Probably didn't miss a witness.
Actually, I have.
So when you say I've been saying
Not just, I apologize. Not just you, but
you mean the defense team?
exactly.
Because you have a vested interest in this case, do you not?
He killed my husband.
And I realize that's your belief.
No, it's not my belief. That's what happened. I was there. You were not.
Right. But actually you weren't there, because didn't you tell this jury that there was a curtain closed?
I was still there.
Oh, now you are inside the curtain?
No, I'm just saying I'm still there. There's a curtain between us.
Okay.
I didn't see you in the hallway. Didn't see you there.
But let's talk about who was in the hallway. Because you talked to this juror just a few minutes ago, and you mentioned that a chaplain talked to you in a hallway. Do you remember that?
When I was leaving.
And you didn't mention the chaplain otherwise.
Yes, I did, down in the emergency room.
So how much time total did the chaplain spend with you that night?
Half hour?
So if a chaplain, though, a chaplain being a religious person, indicated that the chaplain had spent 150 minutes of spiritual care time with you and your daughter, answering your questions and explaining what was going on to you, that that spiritual care note would be wrong.
Correct.
And let's talk about what else would be wrong. Dr. Patel's note at 9:29 a.m. that indicates a patient was discussed with the family along with the resident, and the poor prognosis was shared. Family requested to withdraw care. That note from Dr. Patel would be wrong.
What's the date on that?
It is July 15th.
At 9 a.m.?
Yes, it's his discharge summary about the events that happened.
Okay, I wasn't there at 9 a.m.
That's not my question. So his note
I don't
about the
understand.
summary of events would be wrong?
Say that again, I don't understand the question.
The fact that Dr. Patel indicated that you had discussions with a physician and a resident about Troy's poor prognosis, and you then decided to withdraw care, that would be wrong.
That is definitely wrong.
Okay, let's talk about what else would be wrong. Spiritual care provider note, you indicated 150 minutes would be wrong.
Yes, it's wrong.
The fact that family, the note from the spiritual care provider, I'm just trying to see what would be right and what would be wrong. Family had private gathering around body and then invited chaplain to continue providing support to them. That would be wrong?
Well, so she's saying that we were gathered in the room and we asked her to come in.
Let me read it again.
Okay,
Would this be right or wrong?
okay.
Family had private gathering around the body and then invited chaplain to continue providing support to them. That note would be wrong?
Yeah,
How about this note from the spiritual care provider? Patient's condition did not stabilize, and team informed the family that patient could not live in his current condition. The note from the spiritual care provider goes on. Family opted to withdraw the ventilation support, knowing this patient did not wish to be on life support. That note would also be wrong.
definitely wrong.
So all the notes from the chaplain, Cassandra Wilson, all wrong.
I'm sorry, I do not agree with anything that she says on that paper.
When you get to the ICU, Troy has the tube down his throat,
Correct.
correct?
Correct.
So he's on the ventilator at that point.
Correct.
And you talked about natural death, I think. You've seen a natural death before.
Yes.
You know this from your common knowledge, and again, Mariah's there, that when someone has a ventilator, a tube down their throat, that the machine, right, is breathing for them. You know that, right?
Well, it depends. I've been on a ventilator. I'm sitting right here. I don't understand. I mean,
Okay.
I don't know what the ventilator setting is on, so I don't know how little or how much it's assisting him.
So again, I guess we could go back to the chaplain's note. When you were told that he would not survive but for the ventilator, again, it's your testimony, you never even heard that.
Okay, who's supposed to be telling me this?
The team, the ICU team,
The ICU
which
team?
included Dr. Husel.
Okay, no, did not tell me that.
And again, Mariah's there with you, right? And wasn't Mariah's husband also there?
Correct,
So it was the three of you? Is that right?
correct.
Was there other family there?
No,
Okay, it's just the three of you.
because I didn't know he was going to die, so I would have called them had I been given this information.
But you called your daughter, right?
Yeah,
And she called her husband.
no, they lived together, they're husband and wife, they were living together.
So they came together.
Correct.
So I think there's a couple things I just want to clear up, if I could. First of all, let's go through the timeline. You get this call from someone at Mount Carmel that tells you that there's an investigation. You then file a lawsuit, do you not, on 1/23 of 2019, right?
Yes, I did.
Okay. You file against the hospital, Dr. Husel,
Yep.
the nurses, right? I think you filed 3 lawsuits, didn't you? But then 2 got dismissed, is that right?
I honestly don't know.
Who'd you hire?
Leesburg and Valentine.
And I ask you that, and why it's relevant is because isn't it true that your first interview with Columbus Police Department was on February 28th at 2019? So more than a month after you filed the lawsuit, right?
Correct.
And of course, then anything you say to the Columbus Police Department, you have a pending lawsuit against all these people, right?
Yes.
And isn't it true that that meeting with CPD took place at your lawyer's office?
Yes, it did.
And do you remember being asked about who you've had conversations with in terms of what happened in this case? And you told the police that you've talked to other family members who are also represented by your same lawyer. Do you remember telling the police that?
My family members?
No, other family members of other patients.
There's a,
Do you remember telling the police that?
yeah,
So you have a lawyer that represents multiple families.
yes, my attorney represents quite a few families.
How many?
I honestly don't
Your
know.
Honor?
Sustained.
And so those other family members are all together before your Columbus Police Department interview, and you had a chance to talk. Do you remember telling the police that?
No. What, say it again?
Sure.
That there's a family meeting, what?
I didn't say there's a meeting.
Well, you said there's a gather, that's why I'm asking, go ahead.
You give your police department interview, and you have your lawyer, and then there's also other family members that you've talked to. Not your own family members, but other people that are represented by your lawyer.
I found out that there's somebody that I know in Gahanna. It has to do with living in Gahanna. It doesn't have, they're not related to me. It's not a family member.
Okay, so then you give your Columbus Police Department after you file your lawsuit, and then you give a deposition in 2020 in the civil case, do you not?
Yes.
And then, is it before or after the deposition do you give those 5 to 7 TV interviews?
Well, I don't know how many interviews I've given. I will tell anybody that will listen because the whole place needs to be shut down.
So it could be more than 7.
I don't know. I know that me and him did one to get CNN, and I did CNN many years ago, but I don't know how many more. As I said, I'll tell anybody that wants to listen because it's crazy that this scenario even happened.
Because your lawsuit is still pending.
I don't care about the lawsuit. If I wanted to be rich, I could have been rich in 1992, okay? But that hospital needs to be shut down, and that man needs to go to prison.
Oh, okay. So you don't care about your lawsuit. Have you withdrawn it?
No, I want the hospital shut down.
Well, your lawsuit doesn't ask that the hospital get shut down. It asks that you...
No, but you hurt businesses where it hurts most.
And I mean, at the time of this, Troy was on disability.
Correct.
Were you working?
Yes, I was.
But you had certainly a financial settlement would help you.
Oh, is it going to bring Troy back?
No, that's not my question. Would it help you financially?
It would help anybody financially,
Okay.
but it's not going to give me what I want.
And then I want to talk, just if I can, about your testimony with respect to your relationship with Troy. I just want to be clear that I understand it. I thought in like 2018 to 2010, you were married to someone else. Objection?
I permit it.
I don't remember when I got divorced.
Okay, because I thought I'd heard you tell the jury that you were with Troy for 18 years, but you were actually actually, you were married to someone else in July of 2008, I'm sorry, and then you divorced him. Let me get the date. Let me get the exact date. Yes, thank you. I want to pull the case.
I'm bad at math, I don't know.
Chris Hayes. You were married and divorced
Havens.
to Chris Hayes, correct?
Havens was my last name.
Okay. And so how does this marriage and divorce fit into the timeline of you meeting Troy at a bar in 1999 and being with him that whole time?
What's the question?
How does your marriage and divorce fit in to what you told this jury about your relationship with Troy since 1999?
Well,
Objection, Your Honor.
Sustained.
You told this jury that you met Troy at a bar in 1999. Do you remember that?
yes,
And then you told this jury that you had a relationship with him for 18 years. Do you remember that?
so I don't know if I got the dates wrong, but that's what I said, yes.
Okay. But you were married in 2008 and divorced in 2010 to a different man, were you not?
Objection.
Sustained.
Was Troy the only person that you had a relationship with in those 18 years?
Actually, he was.
Objection.
Sustained.
Wait, may we approach?
Yes, you may. You ready?
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, the jury, the objection sustained. Next question.
You mentioned Mariah is your daughter,
Yes,
and then you mentioned that you had another child.
yes.
And as of 2018, how old was Mariah?
28, 29.
And the other child that you have?
David, he was in his early 30s, 37 now.
When did you marry Troy Allison?
Oh my God. I couldn't tell, I can tell you it was Friday the 13th, April 13th. I don't remember the year.
Can't remember the year?
No.
Within the last decade, five years of his passing, when did you marry him?
I think we were just married just over 10 years when he passed.
So that would be just over 10 years, would be back to 2008.
I think. I'm horrible at math.
And I know you said you're also horrible at names, but good with faces. Remember in your CPD interview, which was in February of 19, after you filed a lawsuit, that you indicated that you couldn't describe any of the people that were involved in the code. Do you remember saying that in your CPD interview?
No, I don't remember saying that.
Page 26.
Do you remember saying that you didn't remember the name of the chaplain?
Objection, Your Honor. Do you know when that was provided to us?
They provided it to us.
No, this is his CPD.
Yes.
Oh, the CPD.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, CPD interview, you provided this to us. Do you remember saying you don't remember the name of the chaplain?
Yes,
Do you remember you saying that you don't remember the names of any male nurses?
that's correct.
Do you remember you saying that you don't remember the name of any doctors in the ER?
That's correct.
You didn't remember any names whatsoever except for one name. Remember that?
Yes,
And it was the one name you remembered was the name of the person that you had named in your lawsuit. And that was Dr. Husel.
correct.
One moment. Just a few more questions. You mentioned about the wound. Just want to ask you about, so we know that there was wondering about the other conditions that Troy had, whether or not you were aware of those. You knew about the duration of the code, correct?
Correct.
You knew that he had respiratory failure because he was actually on the ventilator in the ICU, correct?
They were bagging him,
What does bagging mean?
where you have the tube in your throat and then it's a big bubble and they push it, they squeeze the bubble, the plastic bubble.
So, I'm sorry, is it your testimony that you didn't even know he was on a ventilator?
I'm just saying that in the ER, when they were doing the code, he had the bag.
No, in the ICU when he...
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay. When he gets up to the ICU, he was on a mechanical ventilator, was he not?
Yes,
And so we know that he had respiratory failure because he couldn't breathe, so they put him on a ventilator. And you saw him on a ventilator.
correct.
And then you knew that he had the widespread airspace ossipities in both lungs because it was concerning for the pulmonary hemorrhage. You knew about that?
They did know.
And again, we talked about the codes. Did you know that he was in cardiac shock, which required him to get vasopressors?
No.
And in fact, didn't you even say in the CPD interview, why didn't they give him pressors?
Excuse me?
Or was that Mariah that said that
I
in the interview?
did not say that.
Okay, so did you know that he was on vasopressors to help him live?
Are we talking about at the time of it, or are we talking now?
At the time of this event?
No.
Would you know now that he was on vasopressors?
You're saying it.
No, I'm just, do you know this?
No.
So has your attorney, Mr. Leesburg, ever just given you the medical files of Troy and said, so that you know what really happened, here are the medical records? Has he done that?
Yes.
And have you been able to go over those records and see the multi-system organ failure that's noted all through those records that Troy was experiencing?
Is there a question?
Yes. Did you see all those records that say that?
Are we talking in the ICU, or are we talking in an emergency room? See,
It's the same 24-hour period. And in the ER room is when they're saying prognosis poor, is it not?
oh, so we should give him 1,000 micrograms of fentanyl and just kill him?
Okay.
What?
Answer her question.
I don't understand your question.
You just told us, sir, that you read the medical records.
Yes, I did.
And in the medical records are the chaplain notes, right?
I think so.
Are the ER doctor notes,
Yes.
right? Are the progress notes from the nurses?
Yes.
Are the MARS, the medication administration records, right? Shows you all the meds that Troy was given to keep him alive, right? You read all that. Because I'm assuming you want to know what the actual data is, not what someone tells you on the phone, right?
I read it, and I know what happened that night.
And so then you also know that he was in shock, liver shock. You know that he had endocrine failure. His glucose was at 899. And you know...
What was it when he was up in the ICU?
It was 899.
No, it wasn't. What was it in the
Okay.
ICU?
Hold on. Ask your questions, give an answer.
You knew that Troy was diabetic.
Yes.
And you knew in the ER that you were told that it was over 500. Do you remember that?
Yes.
And did you later learn that it hit 899?
And then was brought down to 500 with a little bit of insulin.
Okay. Do you also know about his pH that was 6.53?
No.
You didn't see that in the medical
I
record?
am not a medical person. I don't know medical terms.
And so you wouldn't know that a 6.53 is not sustainable for life?
No, I would not know that.
And you, I'm guessing, know from the review of the medical records that his lactate was at a 16. You remember that from the medical records?
No.
And a 16, would you happen to know from conversations with your lawyer or other knowledge that that's not compatible with life?
No.
One moment. I know you were asked questions on your direct about did you sign anything as to the code status change. But you were certainly in that Columbus Police Department interview, and Mariah was in there with you. Do you remember that?
Yes.
And it was talked about the decision that the family made to palliatively extubate Troy. Do you remember that early on in the interview?
Are you asking me if I remembered the conversation or if I...
Yeah.
No, because that conversation never happened.
And so if Mariah remembered the conversation happening about you agreeing to be, you saying that he should be extubated because Troy never wanted to be on the vent, that never happened. Is that right?
I did say that, yes.
You did say that.
Well, I didn't say that exactly. I'll tell you what I said. I was asked if Troy wanted to be on life support, and I said no.
And so then actually, if the hospital had known that in advance, he would have never even been put on the vent and saved for those minutes or hours that he was. Because he didn't even want to be on a vent,
Okay.
period. Is that
Yes.
right?
Now answer.
Say it again.
He never even wanted to be on a vent, right? Troy. Let's talk about what Troy wanted.
Okay, but
Yes or no?
your definition of life support and my definition of life support, I don't know if they match.
Okay, the question is, did he want to be on the ventilator?
Yes,
Oh, he did want to be on a vent.
yes.
And so you never said he didn't want to be on a ventilator.
The word ventilator was never used.
So that doctor note would also be incorrect. I'm just trying to make sure I understand.
Well, I'm just trying to, maybe I need to explain that. I didn't understand what was going on. I did not understand.
And then further in the CPD interview, when you were asked about the family's decision to palliatively extubate him, there was discussion, was there not, that the decision was made so that he would be comfortable. And there was discussions about how he would be sure to be comfortable after he was extubated. You don't remember that?
Dr. Husel told me what he was going to do. Nothing, it wasn't asked. I was told.
Was it just you and Dr. Husel in the ICU room that night?
Well, it was just me and him, and then Mariah walked up.
And the floor was empty otherwise, was it? Is that your testimony to this jury?
I honestly don't know if I honestly don't know. But from my vision, I didn't see anybody but me and Dr. Husel and Mariah walking up, and the nurse was in with Troy, I think. I'm not even 100%.
I remember you saying that when you were
The
out.
hallway lights were out, but the room lights were on.
And it was nighttime.
Yeah.
Nothing further, Your Honor.
Redirect?
Yes, Your Honor.
So we spoke a little bit about the fact that Troy's been hospitalized before.
Yes,
Has he ever been on a vent, had he ever been on a vent prior to this?
I think so. I'm not 100%. It's hard.
Okay.
Yes.
Did you think he needed the vent when it was being taken off?
No, I didn't know what.
Your Honor, asked and answered. And I also,
Sustained.
she speculated.
I'll move on. So I'm holding what is marked as State's Exhibit Number 9. These are Troy's medical records.
Okay.
From that hospital visit, July 15, 2018.
Okay.
Anywhere in these records, is there a DNR that you authorized?
No.
Is there one that Troy authorized?
No.
Now, you were asked about the chaplain notes and if they were accurate.
Correct.
So this is page 6 of these medical records. So page 6 of Exhibit 9, Joint Exhibit 9. This says,
Your Honor, you said to us before, we can't show witnesses' docs from other people. So I object. why I didn't go through the document.
Huh?
It's exactly why I didn't show for each document.
Okay. Where are you going with this?
I was just going to establish the time frame in which she was hospitalized.
In which I think we've already gotten testimony on that.
I think that I'm trying to clear up an error that is in the records based on the timing of the chaplain notes.
Then ask her.
How long do you believe that you were in the hospital that day?
3 hours?
And do you know how long it was that Troy, from the time that Troy was admitted to the time that he had passed away? Do you know how long that was?
3 hours? I'm guessing 3 hours.
Okay.
It's a guesstimate.
And were you with the chaplain that entire time?
No.
When you had the discussion about Troy's wishes, about being on life support or not,
Yes.
what does life support mean, or what did it mean to you when you were having that conversation back in 2018?
It meant to me that you're hooked up to this big machine and it breathes for you because you're unable to breathe on your own.
Okay. And when you had the discussion about his what he wanted or didn't want, and then you had a follow-up conversation with Dr. Husel about his status, correct?
He did ask me if he wanted to be on life support, and I said no. But I thought it was like a wanting to know, not that that's where we were. Because I even looked at Mariah like, why is he asking me this? Because I'm seeing a resting, comfortable man. And so I was confused, but I thought, well, maybe he needs to know for later or something. I don't know. But then later, he didn't ask me anything else. He told me, I'm 99.9% sure that he's brain dead and his organs are failing. Okay, that's what he thinks, but now we back it up.
At this point,
Sorry, I couldn't hear what your objection was.
not responsive at this point.
Okay, overruled. New question.
Nothing further, Your Honor.
Okay, ma'am, you may step down.
Thank you.
Let's take our break a little early, guys. Okay, 15 minutes. Let's make it 20 minutes so they have to do something. 22 till. We'll get started back up. Call them up.
All right.
Have a wonderful break. Remember the admonition. Okay, I need 2 seconds with Ms. Schaefer.
Yes, but I want to say to address what she just did.
Ms. Booker, anything for the record?
Nothing from the state, Your Honor.
Ms. Menashe?
Yes, I think my co-counsel has something to address that I didn't see because I intentionally put my head down.
I would rather do it at sidebar, Judge.
Okay.
Do you want to do that before or after you talk to Darcy?
I want to talk to Darcy first. Why don't you guys go and get set up in the back?
Okay, wait,
The state calls Robert Hodge.
Mont, I need you to raise your right hand. You solemnly swear to tell the truth and the whole truth and nothing but yourself you got.
Yes, sir.
Okay, go ahead and get yourself seated. You got a mic there in front of you. Okay, I need you to state your name and spell your name so the court reporter can get used to your voice.
My name is Robert Hodge, R-O-B-E-R-T-H-O-D-G-E.
Now, I know you got a little bit more than that. Can you give me a little bit more volume?
My name is Robert Hodge.
Okay, can you guys hear that? Okay, just make
All right. Good morning, Mr. Hodge. Taylor Mick on behalf of the state. Mr. Hodge, are you related to Jeremy Hodge?
I am the middle child of Jeremy Hodge.
And showing you State's Exhibit 7A. Is this your mother, Jeremy?
Yes,
And I want to apologize if her name has been mispronounced earlier. Does she also go by Sue?
she goes by Sue.
All right. Thank you. Mr. Hodge, you said you were the middle child.
Yes,
How many children did your mother have?
she had 5 boys.
And where did she grow up?
She grew up on the west side.
She born and raised in Columbus?
She was born in West Virginia, raised in Columbus.
How many siblings did she have?
3 brothers and 3 sisters. One passed early in life.
And can you tell us a little bit about your mother?
My mom was very family-oriented. She kept us all together. We had Sunday dinner every Sunday. And she just fun to be around.
Can you tell us a little about, was your mom married?
My mom was married to Stephen Roy Hodge. They was married 40 years.
And is your father still living?
No, he passed 11 years ago, St. Patty's Day.
Did your mom have any health conditions prior to her hospitalization?
She had sugar and blood pressure and stuff like that, yes.
When you say sugar, are you referring to
Her
diabetes?
sugar was high.
Did she have diabetes?
Yes.
Okay. I want to take you to April 1st, 2018. Can you tell us how that day started off?
The day started off, it was Easter, so we was all getting together, and we got together for Easter at Alton Darby Park. And she was sick, feeling bad. We thought she had a cold, something like that. So, she wouldn't let us not go to the park. She went up for a little while and then went home.
And when you say she went home, who did she live with at this time?
She lived with her sister, Mary Jane.
Right. What happened after she went home?
She was home for a while. We finished our Easter because she made sure we was going to do that. And then I went back to her house for a few, and then whenever I was leaving, I left, and I was at Taco Bell, and I got the call that she was getting rushed to the hospital.
Who called you?
I don't remember which one exactly called me, whether it was my cousin or just one of the family members.
Were there a lot of family members at that Easter celebration that day?
Yes, there was.
Approximately how many?
30 to 40.
After you got that phone call that your mom was being rushed to the hospital, what did you do next?
I rushed to the hospital.
And what happened once you arrived?
She was in the ER, and then they checked her out. We talked to the chaplain, but, we were just waiting. And then they said she might have had a heart attack, and they was taking her to the heart cath. So that's when we went up there. And then we was up there for a little while. I don't really know the time frame. Your brain ain't clocking time in predicaments like this. And then they said, well, they come back and said it wasn't a heart attack, that they was taking her to the ICU to do more studies on her and to watch her. And what happened down, and then when we got down there.
When
we
you
was
say down there, do you mean?
Down to the ICU.
Okay.
We was there a little bit, and then the doctor come in and said things has changed on her, status, and, told us. So we was talking, and then he come back, the doctor come back and said that she had no chance.
When you say the doctor came in, are you in your mom's room at this point, or are you in a waiting room?
No, we did not see her until after this conversation.
All right. And you said the doctor told you she had no chance. Did he explain why he had come to that conclusion or how?
I don't, whenever I heard she had no chance, I don't recollect, the conversation.
All right. At some point then, did this topic of a do not resuscitate order come up?
I ain't really 100% sure.
Was your mother on a ventilator at this point, to your knowledge?
To my knowledge, no, I don't think she was.
So you hadn't seen her?
Right, we have not seen her from when she got out of the when we have not seen her all the time she was at the hospital.
What happened after the doctor told you? And to your recollection, do you know which doctor this was that you were talking to?
It was the doctor over the ICU. I didn't know him at the time, and, I wouldn't have remembered his name until all this. Because, doctors is doctors, it ain't,
When, after the doctor told you that she had no chance, what happened next?
Me and my family talked about it, and with no chance, we don't want her to lay there and suffer. And then he told her he would help her pass easy, and, it went on from there.
Was there any discussion or clarification on how he would help her pass easy?
No.
What happened after this conversation?
We went into the room, we was in there for a little bit, and then, she passed.
Was she on a ventilator when you went into the room?
No.
And was she given any medication while you were in the room?
I think,
When you say it happened quickly, could you estimate how long it was before she passed?
it couldn't have been 10, 15 minutes.
Did you have any further discussions with the doctor that day?
No, we just, whenever it happened, we gathered as a family, and then we separated. I went to my kids.
How many people were at the hospital when this was happening from your family?
15, 20.
Going forward in time, how did you come to find out about the investigation into defendant's care of your mom?
Mount Carmel called me and told me at first they was kind of nonchalant, and told me that, there was medicine given to her that, wasn't supposed to, and they would let me know further, in further notice.
And did you speak again with Mount Carmel after that?
Yes, I did, and that's whenever they told me about the others and everything that was going on.
At some point, did you speak to the Columbus police detectives as well?
Yes, I went downtown and spoke to them.
And did your family engage the services of an attorney for a civil
Yes.
lawsuit? Is that lawsuit still pending?
No, it is not.
No further questions.
Cross?
Good morning.
Order.
Diane Menashe on behalf of Dr. Husel. Just got some follow-up questions for you. You mentioned that you gave an interview to Columbus Police Department.
Yes.
And do you remember that that was in February of 2019?
Sometime in there.
Is February 28th of 2019 sound familiar?
I don't remember dates.
You don't remember dates?
No.
Okay. Do you remember, you filed a lawsuit in this case, is that correct?
Yes.
And since you don't remember dates, I'll just ask you before or after. Fair to say that the police interview was after you
Yes.
filed your right?
Yes,
And after you received the call from Mount Carmel.
yes,
So Mount Carmel, you file your lawsuit, then you talk to the police.
yes,
And surely when you were in the police interview, there were detectives there. Do you remember that?
yes,
And I'm assuming that you were trying to answer their questions to the best of your
to the
ability?
best of my knowledge, yes, ma'am.
Knowing what we know about what you said about dates, you would agree with me, Mr. Hodge, that your memory about this event hasn't gotten better with time, has it?
No,
So I want to go back to February 28th of 2019, or at least to your interview with Columbus Police, and ask you about the questions you answered as to who talked to you about your mother's health. Do you remember being asked those questions about who you had conversations with?
I mean, we talked to the doctors and nurses.
And you indicated, did you not, in terms of the conversation where you were told there's no chance, you said, I don't remember her name.
There was a nurse there and a chaplain. I don't remember their names.
And then you continued, did you not, in your interview to use the word they gave us a few so we could talk about it. Do you remember that?
Yes,
And then you said they told us that she's not going to make it.
the doctor and the chaplain and was come out to the room and told us.
So it was a whole group of people.
There was like 2, maybe 3. I don't really remember, but the doctor was there, and then I don't know how many nurses, I don't pay attention to how many people is in a room whenever something like this has happened.
Sure, and on top of that, fortunately, you had a very large family there as well.
Yes,
How many family members were able to gather there?
there's a lot, there's 3 of my brothers, 3 of my brothers and their families, my girlfriend, my aunts, there was a lot, cousins.
Over 10, is that?
Yes, yes,
And everyone was together earlier that day because it
Yes.
was Sunday and it was Easter.
right.
You would agree with me, would you not, that when you gave the interview to police in February of 2019, that you didn't name Dr. Husel in your interview?
I don't remember whether I said his name because I did not know his name. He was just the doctor.
But you know that Dr. Husel isn't a woman, correct? in terms of
Well,
gender?
I mean, there was a male doctor, a woman there. There was a couple people there.
And who is the person that was the next of kin or the durable power?
Me.
That was you.
Yes,
And so ultimately, you were the one that made the decision with respect to the palliative excavation?
ultimately my family did.
Okay.
Everything comes with us to a judgment of family.
And I think that's why you spoke about the family dinners, right? You were
Yes,
very close.
we are very family oriented.
And I remember you telling the police that when you had the conversation with them, or whether it was the nurses or chaplain or doctor, that you then had an opportunity to discuss the options
And-
with the whole family.
Yes, we discussed it.
Tell the jurors where you went to have that discussion.
We had it in the waiting room as we was waiting.
It was right there.
Yes,
And if anyone had any opposition or had any thoughts, were they able to express them as you were all talking as a family?
yes.
And just based on what you said about your family, I assume that if everyone wasn't in agreement, then you would have probably respected that.
Yes, to an extent.
And you, on direct, you talked about how you weren't sure if your mother was intubated or on a ventilator. Do you remember being asked that?
Yes,
Let's go back in time. Before ICU, you were aware now that while you were, I forget where you were, tell me where you went again when you got the call.
I was at Taco Bell.
You were at Taco Bell. Before you got the call at Taco Bell, or when you got the call at Taco Bell that your mom was coding. She was having a heart. She was.
Something, yes, that she wasn't.
And you weren't there, but you now know, do you not, that actually people at the house started giving your mother CPR. That's how serious it was.
That's what I heard, yes.
And the ambulance came and rushed her to the hospital, and so you know, do you not, that she was actually intubated on the way to the hospital. Okay.
I don't know what they done in the
Sustained,
ambulance.
hold on, sustained.
Do you know that actually on the way to the hospital, she was intubated?
I don't know what they did.
Okay.
I'm no medical personnel.
Okay. You have no medical knowledge?
No,
And obviously, very stressful situation for you.
yes.
And when you got to the hospital, what floor did you go to see your mom? Do you remember?
I didn't see my mom until she was in the ICU.
And when you saw your mom in the ICU, and I hate to have you visualize it, but you now remember, do you not, that she was on a ventilator?
Objection.
I do not remember whether she was or just on oxygen.
Overruled. You do not remember?
I do not remember whether she had been on or she was just on oxygen. I know she wasn't on the vent like my dad was.
And so, is it fair to say that this isn't a situation that you really want to remember?
No.
Is this difficult?
Who would?
Seeing your mother like that in the ICU?
Would you want to see your mother like that in the ICU?
Okay, relax for a second. You don't get to ask questions. You're here to tell us, okay?
Okay.
And with respect to the chaplain that was there, were they in the room when your mom passed?
I don't remember.
And was the nurse in the room when your mom passed?
I don't remember. I know my family was there.
And there was space in the room for all the family members?
There was a little, not all, some was standing out in the hallway of the room, but we was all right there around.
Nothing further.
Redirect?
Mr. Hodge, you were asked about what you remember about your mother being on a vent or not that day. This may have been my fault, so just to clarify, did the doctor let you see your mother before you were asked to make the decision about life support?
No, we did not see her until we made the decision, after.
So did you only see your mother at one point during that whole hospitalization? Yes. And was that right before she passed?
Yes.
No further questions.
Okay, you may step down. Well, just hang on for a second. You guys don't have another witness until the next one that we talked about?
That's correct.
Why don't we go to lunch for an hour now? We'll take an early lunch and get started back at 12:30.
Yes, sir.
Will that work for everybody?
Works for the state judge. Thank you.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, I'll give you an early lunch. Okay, we'll get started at 12:30. Call them up. Remember the admonition. Have a great lunch, guys. Just hold, hang tight. Hang tight. Let them get out of there.